How will crush your enemies while Kinich tolerates him, and today I'm gonna tell you how to build them best. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So, what artifacts do the listener and the yapper desire? None other than 4-piece Obsidian Codex. This set is rather excellent on Kinich, as he's a character that uses Night Soul. You can pretty much consider Codex to be the Hunter set of Notlan, as pretty much every crit-based DPS is gonna want to use this. It's simply too hard to pass up all of his free crit rate, and the low crit rate of his signature weapon points towards using the set on him to make up the rest of your stats. The 2-piece increasing raw damage dealt is also insane. Definitely his best in slot set. But of course it's a new set, so not everyone's gonna have good pieces. In such a case, 4-piece Unfinished Reverie is a fantastic placeholder. Since Kinich enjoys working with pyro units, he's pretty consistently able to keep up the passive. It's an excellent choice to choose if you're still trying to put together a competent codex set, as you may have pieces from farming for either your Emily, Coriander, and Arlecchino. 4-piece Hunters can also work too. Codex will be better because it provides 4% more crit rate, and also has Kinich deal more damage when he has Night Soul up, but this choice will work nicely in Kinich Farina teams. This is also a pretty good placeholder considering that everybody should have a competent Hunter set by now, but I will add that it's a more restrictive placeholder than Reverie, because then you're locked to Kinich Farina teams only. You can technically use 4-piece Golden Troop too because of how much damage is within his cannon shots, but I personally prefer picking Reverie or Hunters as a placeholder over this, because those buff Kinich's entire damage profile. It'll work nonetheless. 2-piece mix and match sets for Kinich include 2-piece attack percent, dendro percent, night soul percent, skill percent, burst percent, and ER percent. As for main stats, simple. Go for attack percent, dendro percent, crit percent. There are no reasons to divulge from this particular setup. Kinich wants attack percent over EM as he's a dendro that deals on talent damage. He doesn't rely on core-based damage. And attack percent Sands also becomes even more valuable if you have Kinich as Sig, because attack percent scales on base attack, and Mounted King has a massive base attack stat. For those who have a decent attack percent goblet but no dendro percent one, here's how much worse an attack goblet is compared to the elemental one. As for substats priority, simple, go for this. Definitely make sure to collect a good spread of these stats. I specify crit damage being more important than rate because of how much free rate you'll be getting from his 4-piece. If you're using one of the 4 pieces that provides no crit rate, then both rate and damage become equal in value again. Definitely make sure you have enough ER so that Ahau can unleash his anger in the healthy way of turning into a big dragon and cooking your enemies. He craves violence. Make sure to farm up a codex set for him. It's paired with Cinder City, which is another set you should be farming in general, so pieces will naturally come to you over time. His alternatives are all pretty good too. The listener and the yapper both have one common goal in mind, and that's destroying their enemies, and Kinich is gonna need a good weapon in order for them to achieve that. So let's discuss. Kinich's signature, Fang of the Mountain King, was obviously tailor-made for his kit. The low amount of crit rate is to prevent overcapping on rate, as the game makes the assumption that you're going to use Obsidian Codex on him. The base attack is literally on Broken Pines level, which is insane. It helps balance out Kinich's stats very nicely, giving him lots of attack, with crit rate being a very bountiful resource through other means. Kinich can gain up to 60% skill and burst damage bonus from the passive, but the uptime is shaky because the stacks are counted independently. Regardless, he's able to trigger and upkeep the stacks nicely, plus the passive fits very naturally into his best in slot teams. Easily Kinich's best in slot choice. Free to plays, you're in luck. Because the craftable Earthshaker is excellent on Kinich. It was designed for the dude. Everybody got a free copy if you remember to claim your free craftables from an Outlaw web event, and this Claymore was one of them. It gives Kinich attack percent, which is neat, and remember, since crit rate is so easy to get on Kinich, it actually isn't that bad that Earthshaker doesn't provide crit. The passive provides skill percent when a character triggers a pyro-related reaction. This means 2 things. 1, this fits into Kinich's teams perfectly and works with his kit very well, as it buffs one of his most major sources of damage. And 2, refinements will definitely improve this option on him, so a free-to-play can work on refining this choice over time for even better performance. This is relevant because there's quite a few craftables out there that don't get all that much better with refinements on their respective best users. Great pick. Tidal Shadow, especially at higher refinements, can also work well with Kinich as a good budget option. Plenty of attack percent, which he absolutely adores. To all those of you who've never had a use for their Unforged, you're in luck. This weapon simply provides a crap ton of attack, and since Kinich isn't necessarily strapped for crit stats, this does quite well on him, like, surprisingly well. Using Baiju with Kinich can also let you trigger the attack enhancing passive, which is neat. Do note that without Baiju, the passive falls off by a chunk. Wolf's Gravestone is good for a similar reason. The main flaw is that the second part of its passive has a 30-second downtime. That's pretty gnarly. It'll still be one of his best options though. Navia's weapon, Verdict, also has value on Kinich. The main purpose of using it on him is a high base attack and crit percent. The passive does indeed provide skill percent, but only under the condition of Crystallize, meaning that you'll have 0 stacks in Kinich's best teams. With that being said, the sheer amount of base attack makes it viable on him. Beacon of the Reed Sea also works quite well. Decent base attack and he'll gain more attack percent after a skill usage. The crit rate is a little high for Codex and Hunters, but is nice for Reverie and other substitutes builds. The second part of the passive doesn't really matter for him. Good on the whole. R5 Serpent Spine is typically an insane choice for most Claymore users, but on Kinich, it's not as effective. So while it is a good option, save it for literally any other Claymore user who would appreciate it more. Anybody else can use it to much greater effect. Don't waste your $50, pounds, or euros weapon on this. And at R1, dude, just don't even bother. If I didn't talk about your specific choice, that's because it's worse than Kinich's budget free-to-play picks. See here for any weapons that you're thinking of using that I haven't covered more in depth. The main rule of thumb to follow with this guy is that he wants base attack, and a lot of it. But no, this doesn't mean use Broken Pines on him. Do make sure that the substat and passive of the choice synergizes with the guy as well. In any case, I'm just happy that Wolf's Gravestone and Unforged have a properly competitive use case. Who's going to help Kinich make bank from commission so he can pay for a house counseling sessions? Well, there'd be two main team archetypes fit for the job, Burgeon and Burning. We'll start with his best Burgeon teams, then discuss his finest Burning comps. So, Burgeon. The core consists of the man himself, a Pyro, a Hydro, and then another Dendro. There will be the Farina core and the Emily core. The Farina core consists of Kinich, an off-field Pyro Applicator, Farina, and Baiju. The idea here is that Kinich gets ultimate damage bonus percent from Farina, while competent fanfare generation goes on thanks to Baiju. The Doctor also provides some of his own minor buffing thanks to his A4, plus his ability to hold Deepwood memories. And Kinich is able to retain high mobility as everybody's abilities are able to follow him around as he does his thing. This is a very strong core for Kinich's personal damage, and the Pyro unit can be pretty much anyone that applies Pyro off-field in a large enough range. It's ideal for said Pyro to either have a super large Pyro applying radius, such as Dia, or to have an extremely strong source following Kinich around, such as Xiangling. Most flexible off-field Pyro sources will work, though Xiangling is my favorite Pyro teammate for Kinich because her ring moves around with him and has great Pyro application. His second Burgeon team archetype would be the Emily kind. This team consists of Kinich, a Pyro, Yolan, or Xingqiu, and Emily. The idea is that instead of buffing Kinich's damage to the max, the team's damage profile is shared between both himself and Emily. Yolan and Xingqiu are here to apply Hydro to proc Burgeons, and the Pyro is there to trigger Burning, of course. You can use Bennett for Emily's own damage, but I only recommend doing this versus bosses where Kinich can quickly regain Bennett's buff in time for his skill nukes, otherwise you miss out on a lot of damage. Bennett's burst buff lingers for about 2 seconds, and if Kinich is in a super high mobility scenario, he may not be back in time. Keep that in mind. If you do choose to use Bennett, you can even get the best of both worlds of Kinich, Bennett, Farina, and Emily. But I don't enjoy how you don't have very consistent Pyro application in this scenario. It works, but definitely not my favorite of Kinich's Burgeon teams. After all, the burning effect in this team isn't going to last long enough for Emily to get a level 2 Lumiduce case. For those of you who don't have Emily or Baiju, a fun budget team would be Kinich, Bennett, Xiangling, and either Yolan, Farina, or Xingqiu. Essentially Kinich National, except he benefits from this whole lot quite a bit, as it coincidentally forms a Burgeon team. You can replace units here and there as you wish, changing someone out for Dia or Toma and such, but this particular core will be one of Kinich's strongest budget comps. Then for Kinich Burning. This team core consists of Kinich, Bennett, Xiangling, and Emily. Both Kinich and Emily benefit from burning, so they can work quite well together in this pure burning team. Bennett benefits both Emily and Xiangling's damage, and since Xiangling snapshots, her damage remains solid even after Bennett's burst is down. Though keep in mind once again that if you want to use Bennett with Kinich, time his movements properly to have the attack buff when he does his skill blast, because in very movement heavy scenarios of him, only Xiangling and Emily will be benefiting from his buff. If you don't have Emily, I'd honestly abstain from playing pure Kinich Burning. Budget versions of a team simply don't play as well nor do as much damage as budget Kinich Burgeon teams. But if you want, then you can slot somebody like Fischl or Kale as the 4th slot here, while having them equip Deepwood memories for the sake of Kinich's own numbers. Some general example teams for Burgeon include Kinich, Xiangling, Farina, Baiju, Kinich, Xiangling, Yolan, Emily, Kinich, Bennett, Xiangling, Yolan, Kinich, Dia, Xingqiu, Emily, Kinich, Toma, Yolan, Emily. And some general example teams for Burning include Kinich, Bennett, Xiangling, Emily, Kinich, Dia, Xiangling, Emily, Kinich, Toma, Bennett, Emily, Kinich, Xiangling, Bennett, Fischl, Kinich, Bennett, Xiangling, Kale. You get the gist. Follow the general structure of Kinich, a Pyro, either a second Pyro or a Hydro and a Dendro, and you'll find yourself having quite a great deal of success. Also, I know somebody's gonna tell me that Raiden skill is nice for Kinich and Hyperbloom teams due to his range, being better than Kuki because of such a thing. Yes, that is true, but keep in mind that Hyperbloom is not Kinich's best install team by any means. More so just a fun meme team. Great, his squad's been set up, but how does this cool lad work? Well, his normals on their own deal 3 basic physical strikes, very neat. As for Kinich's skill, using it will start his Night Soul state. He will link himself to an enemy and doing normal attacks during his skill will cause him to deal Dendro-infused normals. When his Night Soul is maxed out, he can do a big cannon shot. This can be both pressed and held. If you run too far away and the link gets broken, you can normal attack an enemy and the link gets re-established. He can also aim his skill in the air to attack from the air. And when you're not fighting anyone, he will lunge himself forward with the grappling hook. The skill cooldown is then reduced by 60% so that you can explore more fluidly. Keep in mind that this is specific to exploration, and once you get into combat, the cooldown of this ability will be normal again. As for Kinich's burst, he releases his little gremlin to do AoE Dendro damage to all those around him. And if Kinich is in the Night Soul state while casting his burst, the duration of How is extended by 1.7 seconds. So you always want to unleash the menace when Kinich is in his Night Soul state. As for Ascension passives, simple. Kinich's A1 helps him generate Night Soul points when enemies are afflicted with burning or burgeon damage. This helps him charge up cannon shots faster and makes it easier for him to get the duration extension on a How. His A4 gives him 1 stack after a Night Soul burst is triggered, which is that white symbol on your screen that occasionally appears when you play not-on characters in your team. After getting 2 stacks of this, Kinich consumes them and will have his next charged up cannon shot deal more damage based on 320% of his attack. Neat stuff. Definitely incentivizes stacking up plenty of attack on this dude. As for talent priorities, simple, go for this. Kinich's Dendro normal scalings are within the skill itself, so the normals themselves don't actually do anything. It's like Child's and Ayato skills, or even Raiden's burst. Ignore the normal attacks is my point. Make sure that you level up his skill a lot as it's the main meat of his kit, and certainly don't ignore his Gremlin Unleashing burst. It's also a pretty significant part of his damage profile. Kinich is a guy who deals in odd jobs, and he should honestly be paid for having to listen to a howl yap. So let's talk Constellations. This is actually a pretty crazy C1 for the guy. More movement speed equals more attacks, which obviously equals more damage. 30% is no chump amount either. The crit damage percent increase is also hecking meaty. Great C1, a very significant improvement to the lad's kit. Now this is quite the C2. Giving Kinich more AoE is excellent because he's pretty single target locked before this Constellation, and the reduction of Dendro res is always splendid. Awesome C2. A +3 to his skill is well appreciated, considering that it's the main meat of his kit. This C4 is wild by C4 standards. It places a greater emphasis on the gremlin. 70% more damage is insane. Plus, lower energy requirements equals more potential rolls that you can pour into Kinich's more offensive stats. At this stage, Kinich's ult is way stronger, so this C5 becomes really goated. Nice. Huh. Wow. Let's just say Kinich's Constellations make him a lot better, yeah? Because you are truly going to be nuking down chambers with the buffs that this C6 provides to my man's Skill Blast. I'd say that if you're starting with Earthshaker, go for Kinich's R1, then C1, then C2, then stop there. Otherwise, go all the way to C6, and yes, C4 is worth getting on its own. For the record, if you have Wolf's Gravestone or Unforged, then I'd rather go for C1 and C2 first, then head for his signature weapon pick. I'm absolutely pleased with Kinich. He's really cool, I love his design, and I think a How is hilarious. Plus, his kit is both super fun and super unique. Seriously, about a How though, I think the only other Hoyo joke I like as much is Argenti being everywhere for no reason. Anyways, point is, Kinich is for sure a satisfactory Dendro DPS. I can't wait to see how future Notlon teammates are gonna cater to this dude's kit and playstyle. Well, there I have it, my favorite Notlon character is already here. Full steam ahead to Mavuika then. Hopefully this video was able to get your How yapping his enemies to death while Kinich doesn't interrupt him this time because they're enemies. Yeah! This has been Juice, signing out, and I've said it once, so I'll say it again. Does anybody else see the similarities here?